If you're the type of person who has never had a problem getting promoted, skip this episode and please come back for the next one. But if you're like me and have often been confuzzled about why some promotions happen for you and others don't, or if you've ever been upset about losing out on a promotion to someone else, or if you've ever wondered why someone you respect and deserve to be promoted was passed over for someone who wasn't as good, stay tuned. In today's episode of No More Illusions, we'll reveal why this sort of thing happens all the time, and frankly, will continue to happen. But most importantly, we'll reveal how this happens. In other words, what's really behind who gets promoted and who gets left out, so you can use this to your advantage. Welcome to No More Illusions. I'm your host, Joe Kwon, the Connection Counselor. Let me tell you two personal career stories that will help illustrate today's illusion of hard work gets you promoted. Thanks so much to Vonetta Daniels, fellow UVA grad, go Who's, former KPMG colleague and healthcare executive who shared this illusion. I can still remember the relatively tiny conference room where I had my first KPMG interview. It was a great chat, and I bonded with the interview over volleyball and a few other things, and then he called in the big boss to come interview me as well. So when his boss came down, it was the shortest interview I ever had. It was about 2 or 3 minutes. She was very polite. She asked some questions and then she said thank you and she went back up. So I waited, and then the original interview came back down, who worked for the big boss as well, and said, Joe, that was either the best interview or the worst interview I've ever seen. I haven't talked to her yet, so we'll let you know. We'll be in touch. So it didn't inspire a ton of confidence, but I thought, maybe it could go my way. So I'm on the call with the recruiter, and the recruiter tells me there was down to you and one other highly qualified candidate. And as soon as the recruiter said the word actually, I knew I wasn't going to like the words that were coming out of her mouth afterwards. And sure enough, she said, actually, so sorry to tell you, we decided to go with the other candidate. And so dreams dashed, feeling not so great, had gotten so far, but so close, but couldn't cross the finish line. And then she said to me, did you know that there was another position available that we were hiring for? And I said, oh, no, I didn't. And she proceeded to tell me about it. And she said, actually, it's a level higher than the position you applied for. And then she asked me if I'd be interested in applying for it. And honestly, I had mixed feelings. I had just gone through this roller coaster of applying for the job and not getting it and thinking it would be so great and a nice change. And then she said, actually, we'd like to offer it to you. So I got promoted before I was hired, and I don't think it was my volleyball skills that got me the promotion. Fast forward about 9 years, and I wasn't getting promoted for the last few years, even though I had tried. So I found a new job, and I told what was sort of a newer manager who had just taken over a little while ago. And he was really happy for me, and we had worked together earlier for many years. So even though he was my manager, we were colleagues before. And on the way out, he lets me know, hey, Joe, I know you've been trying to get that promotion, and I just wanted to let you know it's not a counter, but I got your promotion approved. And I was just flabbergasted. And he had a strong relationship with the big boss, and my previous boss, who had failed to get me promotion after promotion year after year, didn't have as strong of a relationship with the big boss. Well, I thanked my new boss, but I was already pretty motivated to go to the new position, which I'd accepted, so I did. Fast forward 2 years later, and that same boss asked me to come back. But since my position was never made higher because I left, he could only offer me my old position. Now, I was motivated to return at the time, so as long as the salary and responsibilities worked for me, I would come back, which I did. So 2 stories, 3 scenarios, 1 promotion I didn't expect but got, another promotion I got but didn't take, and finally a promotion that was no longer available to me when I was hired back with 2 additional years of experience under my belt. How to get promoted is a topic that often comes up for my mentees and clients, so I began to reflect and research more deeply on this topic, and I came to one disturbing conclusion. Most promotion advice is a shell game. So you know the shell game where you have to guess where the sort of marker is under the shell, and they move the shells around and you have to guess? Well, the funny thing about that game is it's usually a little red ball. The ball was never under any of the shells. It was always in the hand of the operator. So this is what I like to call a red herring, which I learned that phrase in law school, where often there's something that distracts or misleads you from the real issue. And this happens a lot when you're applying for a promotion and your boss comes back or manager comes back and tells you all the various reasons why you can't get the promotion or you didn't get the promotion. And often these are red herrings. They aren't the real reason, but they're just excuses. Like you have to do more, like you have to make more sales or other activities. You have to be more, you have to embody this or that, whatever that means, because it's so subjective. You have to do better in terms of skill or behavior or training. And finally, my favorite, you need more executive presence. So we've talked a lot about the illusion, but what's the truth? As I've come to realize, every single promotion follows the same 2 steps. And I've come up with my own system or way of thinking about it, which I named Path to Promotion. Not very fancy, right? Well, I'm not really a fancy guy, though you'd have to ask my wife to learn whether I'm deluded about that or not. So what are these 2 steps? By the way, these aren't consecutive steps. They're more like 2 requirements, both of which must be met for anyone who gets promoted. I'll summarize it in 1 sentence and then we'll break down the 2 steps. You will only get promoted when the people with the power to promote you execute the process required to get you promoted. You will only get promoted when the people with the power to promote you execute the process to get you promoted. Let's start with the first requirement, power. Do the people in power even know who you are? And why would they support you over others? So for that first interview, the people who promoted me before I even had a position had the power and they supported me, so the promotion happened. Now, also before I left, my newer manager had more power and influence, so I was able to get approved for that promotion. And unfortunately, when I came back, that same manager didn't have the power to create a position which no longer existed, so I had to choose between coming back and taking my old level or not taking the job. So that's the first requirement, power. Now let's talk about the second one, process. What do I mean by process? Well, for any promotion, there may be organizational requirements for that promotion. Things like what's the timing, maybe there's certain credentials or performance metrics that have to be met. Now, I just want to note that people often use this as an excuse. They'll say, oh, the period is past, it's not the right time, you don't have enough years in the job, when in actuality, it's really that they didn't have the power to get you promoted. And if they really did, then a lot of these other things, they might have been able to find a way around them, or they wouldn't have mattered at all. But sometimes there really is a legitimate limitation. For example, Even the CEO, who in most companies seems to have the most power of anyone in the organization, they may be restricted in some very real process ways from promoting someone they rightly or wrongly 100% support for the promotion. For example, the head lawyer for the company is going to need to be an accredited lawyer in good standing, and in most companies, the CEO cannot ignore that requirement just because they went to law school together. There's a lot more that goes into this, like what makes the people with power want to pick you and the types of process you need to look out for and sometimes help your boss look out for. But for the sake of brevity, I'm going to leave it at that for now so this doesn't end up being a 60-minute episode. So remember, hard work getting you promoted is an illusion. When you release that illusion, you free yourself to focus on what actually matters. The people with the power choosing you and following the process needed to get you promoted. Let that be your guide, and I'm confident your results will improve. If this resonated with you, you can join the Connection Counselor newsletter at connectioncounselor.com, where I share reflections and practical ideas on work, people, and personal growth. Or reach out to me at joe@connectioncounselor.com. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to No More Illusions. I'm Joe Kwon, the Connection Counselor. Take care, and remember, clarity reveals, illusion steals.